This podcast contains descriptions of violence against children and adult language and is not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Suffer the Little Children, the podcast giving voices back to the victims of child abuse murder and their families. I'm your host, Laine, and this is episode 174, Macy Grace Ditty, Part 2. Last week, I told you the story of 2-year-old Macy Grace Ditty, who arrived at the hospital in Fayetteville, North Carolina on December 2nd, 2015, covered in bruises. Macy's mother, Jeanie Ditty, went to trial for murder, but that ended in a mistrial due to a hung jury. And now, over 8 years after Macy's death, justice still hasn't been served. In this episode, you'll hear my conversation with Michelle Smith, Macy Grace's great-aunt, who runs the Justice for Macy Facebook page and dedicates herself to keeping her precious niece's memory alive. This is part 2 of the mind-boggling story of Macy Grace Ditty. And here is my conversation with Macy's Aunt Shelley. Today I'm talking to Macy's Aunt Shelley, who is Jeannie's maternal aunt. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate this.
I'm glad to be here.
I'm so frustrated for you. I can only imagine how your family feels.
It's very, very frustrating. It feels like you're standing on top of a mountain screaming, and you know there's all these people that are down there and they can hear you, but they act like they can't hear you.
Right. I don't know why it doesn't matter more. It's gone through 3 prosecutors at this point, right? You're on the 3rd.
We are on the 3rd, yep.
And how do you feel about the current prosecutor? Is it Lisa Coltrane?
Yep, Lisa. We really like her.
Oh, good. Okay. So how do you feel about things moving forward? Do you feel like she's actually going to push it forward?
She keeps a picture of Macy on her desk.
Oh, good. That says something very important about her character.
This case disturbs her in many ways.
I can only imagine, yeah. Have you kept track of how many stories Jeannie has actually told?
Yeah, So I think that pretty much before we went to trial, there was 4 or 5 stories.
Yeah, she's told a bunch of different things, whether it's the banana story or she was sleeping when she threw up or she left her at home with Zachary. And there was so many. It just was absurd that anyone believes her, including Judge Ammons.
Yep, Judge Ammons.
Unbelievable. Just reading the transcripts you sent me, my head spins. I can't imagine how that convinces anyone.
I don't understand that either, because she never says a word.
She must have some sort of charm or aura about her, I guess.
She's very manipulative. Men love her.
Was she always like that? So you met her when she was 5?
Yep, it was the summer before her 5th birthday. And I mean, I will never forget meeting her and her just looking at me and me just looking at her. And she was very outgoing. She was like, "Hi, my name is Jeannie." And she says, "Are you with my Uncle Bobby?" Like, she was just adorable, and I loved her instantaneously.
So you guys were close over the years?
Over the years, whether she be with her mom or her dad, she kept in touch. She sent pictures, she ran track. So I got pictures in the mail of her running track, softball, all sorts of stuff. Then the summer before her senior year, she moved in with her grandmother. She spent a lot of that summer with me. Even then, going to school, she had prom, all those things there was a part of there with her.
So you really did see her through a lot of things. No wonder you guys were close, and that must have been such a jarring change when you suddenly realized that you couldn't trust her at all.
I have said since this whole thing started, I lost 2 people that day. Because when you love someone so much, you don't ever want to think, you don't automatically go, "Yep, they did this." In this particular instance, I had never been more sure of anything in my entire life.
Did you see signs leading up to it, or was it just that one day.
In hindsight, looking back, things that she explained away and that were easily explained away, like when Macy started crawling around, if there was a bruise or a mark, it was because she was unsteady, just learning. Then once Macy started to walk, if the bruises were a little bit bigger, it was because she was learning how to walk. For me or my husband or anyone in the family, there was never that moment where you think she's hurting the baby. Did we think that sometimes she was a little strict? Yes. However, we then could say at the time, she wants to give the child the discipline that maybe she didn't have. So it was never anything alarming.
I've seen you reference, I think it was on the page, that you wished Jeanie could have broken the cycle. Was that how her childhood went? Is that what you were referencing?
So, Jeanie always felt that her parents could have been better parents. Jeanie told a lot of stories and manipulated both of her parents. However, her parents could have been better parents, yes. But Jeanie didn't live through anything that would constitute you waking up one day and saying, I'm going to beat my child to death.
Yeah, I can't imagine what you'd have to live through to get to that point. It sounds like she's always kind of had a disturbing talent for lying and making people believe her.
1,000%.
Did she do that from a young age too?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say the first time that she really manipulated a situation, she might have been about 10. She created a situation where she told her dad she didn't want to live with her mom. She told her mom she was running away, like it was the whole big thing, all because she wanted to go live with her dad. But she created a situation with her mother just so mom would say, good, go live with your dad.
That is disturbing.
Yes. Jeanie created a situation between me and her stepmother. Her stepmother and I never even spoke, but yet there was an animosity that existed because Jeanie made it that way. She would tell her stepmom at the time that I would talk shit. And she'd tell me that the stepmom was talking shit about me. And I'm thinking, I don't even know these people. Come to find out, after it's all said and done, it was all Jeanie's doing.
She just weaponized you against each other. And do you have any idea why?
Nope. Because I think then people would know. She knew that she had created scenarios of lies. So when she's telling me how horrible her life is with her dad, she wants me to feel some type of way about her dad. But then if she were living with mom, she would tell dad how horrible her life was with mom. I can tell you that I argued with both of her parents over her when in reality, it was all because of a situation she's created herself.
She definitely sounds manipulative, and that was a word that just kept coming up whenever I saw friends talking.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of obvious lies, and just trying to sort through them all. That's, I think, what took me the longest, trying to keep track of who she told what. And I eventually just had to say she told some friends this and some friends that, because there was just too many.
There was a story where so when Julia had the case, so I had gotten a message on Macy's page that Jeanie had told somebody that Macy got into rat poison.
That's brand new. I never saw that one.
Well, this one we kept off the record until after. They actually did have to rerun lab tests to see if there was, if there were any of that kind of poisoning in Macy's system, and there was not. But again, that was a story.
Did that one come up at trial?
No, it came up 8 months to a year before trial.
Yeah, I can only imagine having to sit through that trial and hear some of the things that she was trying to pass off as truth.
It was very difficult because some of the stuff is laughable.
Yeah, I mean, as much as it's not a funny situation, it's just, you almost want to step back and say, what are you doing? Are you a clown?
It's bad how she has made an actual scene out of everything that had to do with Macy. She made a scene at Macy's service. She made a scene at Macy's funeral. She made a scene at the hospital between her and I. There were projected outbursts because all eyes were on her.
So she had to make someone else look like the bad guy.
That's right. First of all, I was kicked out of the hospital.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, well, so when Jeanie called me, I was the first person she called. Like literally, as her and Macy are getting loaded onto the ambulance, she's on the phone with me. I got my mother-in-law, and we left the next morning out to North Carolina.
And you were up in PA.
Pennsylvania, yep. So we get down to the hospital. It's late. It's like 9 o'clock at night, maybe 10 o'clock. And I get to the hospital. There is my niece, Mr. Kiefer, and 3 other women. I'm assuming they could maybe be her friends. I honestly have no idea who they were because my mind immediately then felt, seeing her sitting there confirmed that something was very wrong here.
You saw Jeanie sitting there, you saw Zach, you saw her 3 friends.
And they were in the lobby of the hospital. When I walked into the hospital, my first words were, "Why are you sitting here? And why aren't you upstairs with that baby?" Her response to me was, "Well, I knew you were almost here, so we just came down here to wait." Like it was for any reason whatsoever other than her dead baby upstairs.
At that point, did she know Macy's prognosis?
Oh, yes, she did. I had already gotten the text messages about life support, brain damage, all of that.
Okay, so she had texted you throughout the whole thing, giving you updates on how it was going.
Yep. Everything.
When you saw Macy, did she go in with you at the same time?
Yes, we get up to the PICU at Chapel Hill, and she looked at me and she said, "Now, when we get back here," she says, "I need you to keep it together and not get worked up." And I wondered why she would say that to me, because I went to school to be a medical assistant and had been planning on moving on to be a nurse, but other things happened. So she certainly couldn't have thought that I was going to overreact at the sight of a medical situation. No. At the back of her mind, she knew this was the moment of truth between me and her. You see, because if I believed her, I would be on her side and would be fighting for her. I already knew CPS was there. I already knew the cops had come.
And they already had their suspicions at that point.
At this point, yes, only I did not know. She told me that the cops were there for some reason, and I really kind of blew it off, to be honest, just because she does tell stories. So then I walked into that room, and all the breath left my body. I dropped my purse, and I fell to the floor. All I saw was this poor little girl who used to be so full of life, laying there, lifeless. They had her head and her neck supported. They had her arms down at her side, hospital blankets up to her neck. And I said to my niece, I said, "What happened to this baby?" And my niece stood there looking out the window with her back towards me. And I lifted up the blankets and began to look at Macy's poor little body, black and blue on her little piggies. You could see the black and blue marks on each of her little bones on her right foot, the lumps of bruises up her legs. And as I assessed the baby, looking at her over, just looking at her, all I saw was a child who, I mean, she could have been drugged through the street by a wild animal. Yet the surface of her face, like from the eyebrows around her cheekbones to her chin, around the other side, the complete perfect visual circle of her face was untouched.
That sounds not coincidental.
No. When I finally got to Macy's head, I kissed her. And I said, "Baby girl, I don't know how you got here or why you are the way you are, but I promise it will never end until I find out. And I will promise you, little girl, that whatever happened to you and whoever did this is going to suffer, and there will be justice." And I began to shake, and the tears dried up really fast, and the anger was there. And I looked at my niece and I said, I need you to tell me right now what happened to this baby. And she said, I already told you, Aunt Shelley, she was sick. And I said, you are out of your mind. If you think for 1 minute that I believe that the condition of this baby's body is because of EMS. I said, that is impossible. I said, you did this. You did this to her. And she told me to get the fuck out. I picked up my purse. I looked at every single nurse that was standing there, including the one that was in the baby's room, because Jeanie was not allowed to be left alone.
So the police may have had something to do with that.
That was the hospital. Those nurses were so concerned that they wouldn't even let her in the room alone for fear she would take that baby off of life support.
They must have seen something wrong a mile away.
Had to have.
I'll pause here for a quick sponsor break. Do you know, did Macy actually have a seizure in the ambulance, or was that just another story?
I don't believe that there was a seizure in the ambulance. No, there was nothing testified. I, for the life of me, cannot recall any EMT, any of them that were there that morning saying Macy had a seizure in the ambulance.
You know what they say, if you tell the truth, you don't have to keep track of your lies. So it sounds like she was... Did she tailor the story specifically to each person? I don't understand it.
Yes. So I have a rare blood disorder. That's called TTP. I am 1 in 5 million. Jeanie tried to say that the bruises that Macy had to be because she had her aunt's blood disorder.
Which, if you were blood related, I could see possibly.
Correct, except I'm married to her mother's brother.
Right. It doesn't pass on through marriage.
No, it doesn't. Because I was asked by the police once I contacted them, not that they called me, even though during Jeannie's interview process with the police at the police department, all she does is talk about me. Her and I are even on the phone during the interview in the police department.
And did you hear some of the interview?
Oh, no. He was very quiet and let her talk. This was played at trial. And he's letting her talk to me, have a conversation with me. At this point, Detective Johnson still didn't call me. Who are you? Do you know? Nothing. The Monday after Macy was taken off of life support, so that would have been December 7th of 2015, did I initiate contact with Detective Johnson and the Fayetteville Police Department.
They didn't call you as part of the investigation?
No, ma'am.
That's interesting. My mind's a little bit blown, but I know you had mentioned the investigation was subpar, let's say.
Yep. And that's about as far as I can say because we still have the chance of a trial.
Yes. And I definitely do not want to get in the way of that. Did you end up testifying at trial the first time?
Nope. My niece did not want me to testify. That's very clearly number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, Julia honestly had a lock, stock, and barrel case. It was every medical professional that encountered Jeanie from beginning to end. It was the doctor that saw Macy the day before, which I thought was funny that Jeanie took her to an urgent care and not her regular pediatrician. This doctor, they actually had to threaten him with contempt in order to get him to testify. The judge said if he's not here tomorrow, he's either off your witness list or you have to force him to be here.
And his testimony, did that help the defense at all?
I don't think so. All he could really testify to was that he had seen Macy. She appeared to be normal. He listened to her stomach, which sounded very gurgly, so we could back up a, gastrointestinal scenario. But then Jeanie also goes on after that to say she took Macy to McDonald's.
With gastroenteritis.
That is correct.
Yep, first place you go.
You got that right. And when Macy's autopsy was done, so McDonald's was on Tuesday, Wednesday was the beating, hospital Thursday, Friday, autopsy performance began on Monday. There was a half piece of chicken nugget in that baby's belly. That's all. If the child had a full meal and a banana, let's not forget, because she did tell the police that Macy ate a banana that morning before she left to go to her appointment. She said she fed her and that Macy went back to bed.
Okay. And was she saying at that point that she took Macy with her?
No, she's never said where Macy was. Even now, nobody really actually truly knows if Macy laid at home by herself in peril. Honestly, I have my own theories. In the event that she couldn't get Mr. Kiefer there was a plan B. I will guarantee you that. I personally think she thought that Macy was already dead and then had to create her alibi.
Do you think the beating that caused the brain damage happened that morning?
No, absolutely not. Autopsy says 12 to 24 hours prior to Macy being taken to the hospital.
So when the defense tried to say that it could have happened that morning, I never saw any evidence presented, in anything that I came across that said that could be true. It was just what he said.
That's just what he said. He said a lot of things.
Yes. But then he did recuse himself after the trial.
Yes, he did. Well, that was because he got... So when the Black Lives Matter movement was happening, there was some things that went on in Fayetteville, and Mr. Conlon went on to his very public Facebook and had some very serious racial misconduct, in spite of the fact that he has a biracial grandchild.
Oh, that's not a good look.
He left the public defender's office, but he didn't have a choice.
And what about the DA's office? Do you want to talk about that?
We can say this much. So they called Tina and they said, well, Jeannie's getting out of jail today and we're taking Mr. Kiefer to trial. And Tina said, I'm sorry, what? Now, at this point, no one had even spoken to Tina from the DA's office as Macy's grandmother for 7 months. No phone call, no email. Cumberland County has this big, huge victims advocacy thing that they pride themselves in. I can promise you that not one of those were ever met with this family. Not me, nor Tina.
That is awful. And I was going to ask you that as well, about how your family's been treated.
They actually questioned Kevin, Macy's father, harder than they questioned Miss Ditty.
And he was deployed.
In Dubai. Was there any way he could have somebody come back and harm his daughter?
Why would he hire someone to do that?
I'm telling you, this whole entire... Not only should Macy be here, but there is a very clear picture of who murdered this baby, and this woman has another child. This woman has another baby.
And custody.
And North Carolina doesn't force you to give up the father.
It baffles me that she's even allowed to have custody of this new baby.
Yep, CPS was... So she has several aliases that she uses, which... I mean, if I killed my kid, I'd want to probably not want people to know who I was too, but she also then puts herself out in public and on social media, so you can't have it both ways. So she used a false name during her pregnancy and when she went into labor. However, I don't know if she thinks her social security number is going to change according to her name, but it does not.
Right.
So then she was red flagged. CPS came. CPS would not let her be unsupervised with the child.
Because she still had active murder charges at that point.
This baby came in October of 23. So this is now she's out on this plea deal and awaiting a court of appeals opinion. The state refuses to drop the charges. The state refuses to agree to this plea deal.
Excellent.
So now the way it works is the Attorney General's office is the one that has Macy's case, and they fight it in the Court of Appeals.
Okay. And you're going on, 3 years waiting to hear back on that?
So let's see, the Court of Appeals, 21, 22. Yeah, it's been like 2 years now.
It seems like a very long time, but I can understand why it would be pretty complicated.
Well, this is never, so other than Judge Evans, in the history of North Carolina, they've never had another judge do what he's done.
Yeah, it's so strange the way he just kind of forgave everything and said she's the victim, that I can't. I just don't know what to say to that.
He said the real victim here is Miss Ditty.
That's absurd. There's a dead baby, and he's going to say those words out loud in open court. Like,
absolutely, it's in the transcripts.
God, my skin just crawled. It's so wrong. That's the first word that comes to mind. It's just wrong. This is an injustice so far, but I'm very much hoping that Ms. Coltrane can push all of this through, and I'm glad she at least seems to have your family's back on this.
Oh, she definitely does.
Good.
They definitely, I can say that when other prosecutors came in, things changed dramatically. They wanted to know, how was Jeanie when she was growing up? How was Jeanie this? How was Jeanie that? They wanted to know these things.
They investigated, which is the idea.
Right. For me, perfectly good question. I had Mr. Kiefer in my house twice with Macy and Jeanie.
And what did you think about him then?
If you think for 1 minute that I ever thought that this man harmed that child, the answer is absolutely, positively, no way, no how.
So I don't have to ask you if you believe he is guilty.
Nope, I do not. Do I think he's guilty of being stupid? Yes. Have I said this to him directly? 150 million times.
And he probably agrees with you.
I can tell you that baby was never, not even a flinch, afraid of him.
Do you think she was afraid of her mother at all?
Yes. Yes, I do. The very last time that Jeanie and Macy were at my house was also Mr. Kiefer was there as well. And Mr. Kiefer was very content, just chilling, like hanging out. We had a pool. Our kids had like friends over. So like everybody was just hanging out. And Jeanie wanted to then go, let's go here, let's go there, let's go here, let's go there. And she didn't want to take Macy with her. And I said, I don't know why you don't want to take her, but she obviously can stay here with me. That's fine. And Macy got upset. And she did fuss a little bit about it because she wanted to go with her mom. And Jeanie yelled at her. And she said, no. And she yelled, no. And Macy squatted and peed.
Oh, poor baby. Does she have a temper?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That she does have. And in that moment, that's when I thought to myself, Jeanie is way too strict. Do you know what I'm saying?
Like she's too hard on the baby.
Right. Like she wasn't even aggressive towards Macy in that moment. It was just the way she said no, that it was enough to scare Macy. So at that point, I'm thinking she has got to really yell at her to scare her. She's got to get to a point where she knows if she says it one way, that Macy's really going to fall into line. Almost like she was the baby's drill sergeant.
Yeah.
And in that, like I said, in that moment, I mean, it's not like she raised a hand. It's not like she did any of those things to make me even think she was touching her, but just being way too hard on a 2-year-old. Like, I understand you want your daughter to have structure. She always said that. Structure. But she's also only 2 years old. She's still a little baby. And Jeanie acted very much like that 2-year-old child was grown.
Did Macy have a speech delay, or was that pretty much solved?
No, Macy did start to talk actually pretty well. And then she just decided she wasn't. Unless she wanted to. She wasn't talking. So, yeah, the last time that Macy came to us, which is when Zach and Jeanie were with her, they came up, they left her with me. I had her for a month. After her being there with me for, a month, she's jibber-jabbering away. It's fine. I know what she's telling me. She knows what I'm saying to her. We're good. She went back home. She was home for a couple weeks, and then Tina got her. When Tina got her, she was very introvert as far as her jabbering away, and she was very to herself. After a couple days, out of her little shell she came. And at that point, even for me, and I know that Tina felt the same, Macy was, she had been at my house. Now she's at Nan's house, at Nana's. So can I just maybe have 5 minutes with my mom? So we thought that she kind of was maybe just disgusted with the travel.
Because she did bounce back and forth a lot.
Yes. So, but then after she was with Tina for a couple days, she was fine. Chatting away, jibber-jabbering, talking, everything was fine. Then Jeanie wanted her back home. Tina drove her back to North Carolina from Alabama. The child was home 2 days, and Jeanie had made mention to me about, did I want her? And I couldn't take her at the time because I was getting ready to start chemo for my blood disorder. So after, I want to say, a week, she went back to Nana in Alabama. So 3 weeks she was in Alabama with Tina. Jeanie kept telling me that Kevin was going to be home for Christmas.
And that was 2015?
Yes. So after her saying this so many times, I had said something to my husband and thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to say something to Tina. I'm going to reach out. And maybe since Kevin's going to be home for Christmas, let's take Christmas to them. So Tina then contacted Jeanie and had said something to Jeanie about Kevin coming home. What's going on? What's the plan? Jeanie was very offended that I went behind her back and spoke to Tina. Jeanie then proceeded to go on and make a post on Facebook that if anybody wanted to see her daughter from now on, they'd have to drive down I-95 to where she will be.
So she seems to have a propensity for drama.
Yep. Then after Jeanie makes this post, she demands to Tina that Tina bring Macy home immediately. So Tina works things out with her job so that she can bring Macy back to her mother. 9 days later, Macy's dead.
I'll pause to hear a word from my sponsors. Did she spend almost more time outside of the home than in it?
Absolutely.
Jeanie only wanted her when it was basically convenient.
And when it would make her look like a good mother.
Were there a lot of those type of Facebook posts?
So many.
So everything's beautiful and wonderful and look at my child. And yet people were saying that Macy's hair was wild and she didn't seem bathed. So she would clean her up for Facebook.
Yep. And she wanted her to be a showcase at her funeral.
How do you mean?
So she bedazzled her clothes, made her a headband, all sorts of stuff like that, and picked out a sleeveless, so it would have been like a tank top, black velvet dress with like a black lace over it, black. The funeral director said to her, you better find a sweater, you better find something, and I am, He said, there is no way that I can have this baby's skin exposed with all of the bruises. No. She wanted that baby's arms bare out.
I can't even understand that.
Well, it would give her more sympathy. Look at what the EMS did.
Okay, she wasn't even pointing the finger at Zachary yet. So when you said earlier that she caused a scene at the service and the funeral, what happened there?
Well, when I walked in, she started flipping out, screaming. She wanted to fight me. Same stuff happened at the hospital. She wanted to fight me. Zach held her back. Zach is like, what is wrong with you? And all I did is look her dead in the face, and I said, you did this to this baby. You did this to this baby. I begged Zach, please let her go. Let her come at me because I am not a 2-year-old. I said, and she will not throw me around like a rag doll like she did to her baby. And if you could have seen Jeannie's face, she was seething mad.
So she tried to kick you out.
Oh, and she told me, get out. And she told the nurses and she told the doctors and the security at the hospital. And make no mistake, I tried to get back in and I was told right where to go. And I was never allowed to see that baby again.
That was the last time you saw Macy, on December 3rd.
Yep.
God. And then at the funeral, did she try to kick you out of there as well?
Oh, she tried. And Kevin looked at her and he said, "You will not do this at my daughter's funeral. You will get a grip. That is that baby's aunt."
And he was allowed in too, which I'm glad to hear.
Yes. Yep. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Well, Jeanie was 45 minutes late for her own daughter's funeral.
Oh, stop.
Yes, ma'am. We had the whole viewing. It was open casket. The viewing was over. We're all in the cars to go to the cemetery. And there still is no baby mommy.
Oh, where was she?
She was running late. She had to go get her hair done and her makeup.
Okay. I'm just reeling. I really can't picture this. So she had to get her hair and makeup done for her 2-year-old's funeral.
Correct.
She wasn't worried about crying it off.
Oh, she shed not oh, God, I wish she would have even had one tear. I might have been okay. Just one tear would have been fine.
That's so odd. And I know everyone grieves differently, but there are certain things you really do expect and do not expect.
She walked into the chapel holding a red rose, like she was walking up the aisle, like only from right to left. And she walked up to Macy's casket and placed the red rose on Macy's chest.
Can you explain how she managed to get her name on the headstone, but not Kevin's?
So, because Kevin was active duty and Jeanie was his civilian wife at the time, Jeanie had called Kevin's sergeant. She told Kevin's sergeant that he threatened her, and then the Army put a no contact in place and told Kevin, if you go anywhere near her, it's going to do nothing but cause you problems. Jeanie then had scheduled the appointment to do Macy's headstone, told them that Kevin, well, she sat there, then she started to cry. She couldn't believe it. Kevin didn't even show up for his own daughter to put his name on the headstone, when in reality, Kevin couldn't go there because he was advised by his commanding officer that he couldn't have any contact with Jeanie.
That is cold. It's terrifying. And so she ended up with her former military rank on the headstone, and Kevin is excluded completely.
Yes.
If the trial goes through and everything goes as planned and Jeannie's convicted, does Kevin plan to have it changed?
Absolutely.
Good.
But until then, that headstone has to stay the way it is.
Does Jeanie own the plot?
No, Kevin does.
Okay, that's good at least. I did want to ask too, I know that there was a picture of, it looked like a bald spot where her hair had been pulled out.
Yes.
And the nail marks around Macy's neck. How did that get explained away, or did it?
She avoids it. There is acknowledgement to the scalp in an interview with Detective Johnson where he says to her, in the last couple days, has Macy fallen or anything like that that would have caused her to be sick? Jeanie said, well, the only thing I can think of is she did fall on Monday while playing in the bathtub, and she hit her head. But she didn't cry or anything. She was fine. So is that where the hair comes from in the drain? Yeah, probably. I didn't clean it up.
I have never seen anyone fall in the tub hard enough to pull their own hair out.
Correct.
And so the police did find a clump of Macy's hair in the drain.
Yep.
I'm baffled. I'm so baffled. What do you think actually caused the jury to hang? What was the holdup for those 2 jurors?
So one woman was old school Army, and the man was, I'm not sure of his background, but discipline in his background is very different than discipline here. So according to their thoughts, if this happened and Jeanie was disciplining her child, they didn't really see as how hands could be used as a murder weapon.
Really? So he just couldn't understand the idea of someone hitting someone hard enough to cause brain damage.
No, because where he comes from, kids get beat all the time, and they're fine.
Okay, that's very interesting. So he literally just couldn't agree on the murder charge because of that.
Yep. They were all in agreement of the felonious child abuse charge.
I can't understand that from his perspective, that he would convict her on child abuse, but not murder.
Correct. Of course, I mean, now, we did hear, and again, this is rumors, hearsay, stuff like that, but we did hear that particular juror also goes to church with Mr. Condolin.
Oh, the defense attorney. Okay.
Yes, indeed. And the man was not originally picked. He was an alternate.
Now, Jeanie didn't take the stand.
Nope.
But she wanted to.
She did. Oh, it was very hard for her.
She couldn't spin it the way she wanted to.
You know, they showed autopsy photos. There was no reaction. None.
Really?
Not a single one from her. The jury is looking at these photos and breaking down. And there are even more photos than I have access to. And didn't faze her one bit. There was not one thing the prosecution said that unnerved her one time. Not one time. But what did show emotion out of her were two things. When Kayla the hairdresser got up on the stand and smiled at Jeanie, Jeanie cried.
Oh, that's interesting.
When Mr. Kiefer took the stand, he was subpoenaed by the defense. They asked him what was his relationship with Miss Ditty. And he said, until all of this happened, she was nothing but a piece of ass. And Jeanie went, and just cried like that.
Unreal. That's bizarre behavior, to say the least. But for that to be the one thing that gets a rise out of her when she's talking about her dead child.
And the death of her child, that they're supposedly Mr. Kiefer is the one who killed.
Right. And that was their defense.
Yet, even when the defense is questioning Mr. Kiefer, they said, well, where did this alibi all of a sudden come from that you were at the gym? And Mr. Kiefer said, it's always been the alibi, but no one's ever asked me.
So they didn't really do a very in-depth investigation of him either.
Nope.
What put him on the police's radar then in the first place? Just Jeanie's stories?
So honestly, I think it was his ex-wife, Lisa.
I know there was a lot of drama surrounding Lisa.
I think Lisa is a liar and a manipulator.
Okay. And she perjured herself on the stand.
Oh, she definitely perjured herself on the stand. She said Mr. Kiefer threw away Macy's things. When in reality, Lisa Kiefer went into Jeanie and Zach's apartment, went through the whole entire apartment. I have text messages and screenshots of Lisa Kiefer in their apartment, taking pictures of stuff.
After the arrests.
After they were arrested. And in two, and they were bigger than an egg box, but smaller than a packing box, are two boxes that have my name on the outside of the boxes.
And did she write that or did Jeanie?
I'm assuming that it had to be Jeanie because even when I got possession of these items, inside were two pictures that she had bought for my daughter, her cousin, for Christmas. Even after the fact that she has now killed her daughter, has threatened the whole entire family, sending us to jail, doing charges, the whole bit. There are two pictures inside the box that say to Courtney for Christmas, even though she was disrespectful to me.
Oh, it said that.
Yes, ma'am. I have photos. I have screenshots of it.
My head just spins. It's unbelievable. And what else was in the boxes?
So every outfit that we ever bought for Macy was in those boxes. Cowboy boots that we bought for Macy. Macy's hairbrush with her hair in it. There were a couple things in there that Tina had gotten for Macy, so I made sure that Tina got those things back. All of Jeanie's paperwork, like that had my name on it, medical records, where she had me listed as her point of contact, her emergency contact, her paperwork for the Army that has me listed as the next of kin in case something would happen to her for Macy. Like, all those papers were in there.
And was anything in there that Lisa later alleged was thrown away?
Oh, yeah, all of it.
But she sent you photos.
She sent me photos when she first got the boxes and said, this is what's in them. Okay, great, no problem. I then go to North Carolina to meet Lisa Kiefer and pick up Macy's items. We let Lisa and her daughter keep a table and chairs that were frozen and the plush chair that Jeanie had listed for sale. Tina had just bought those for Macy. So Tina allowed Lisa to keep them for her daughter. all of the rest of the belongings, blankets, nightgowns, those types of things, I have them all. So even after Lisa testified at trial that this is what Mr. Kiefer did, here I am to the prosecution. Here we go. Hello, I have everything. So by this point, once I'm able to prove the trial is now, we're all said and done. So if Lisa Kiefer decides that she's going to testify at the next trial, she should definitely think about what she's going to say.
And I would hope that the transcript from the last trial could be introduced.
It surely can be.
It sounds like she just wants her ex-husband to be in trouble.
Because he cheated on her with Jeanie and was basically like, he's seeing Jeanie and then he's going home to his wife. And Jeanie and Mr. Kiefer did not get serious until this happened with Macy. Zach knew then he had no choice but to tell his wife he had been having an affair. A baby is dead, and I can never come back from this in our marriage. That's exactly how he broke it to her. And he told her, I can't say her name, but tell her that I love her and that I will always be her dad, and I always want to be her dad. Well, to the police and Lisa Kiefer, that is an admission of guilt. I cannot come back to our marriage after this. While he was going back and forth, and it wasn't that Lisa didn't know who Jeanie was, but she didn't know that the situation was what it was. She thought Zach was training her.
Did they meet at the gym?
Yes.
And did they end up getting engaged after Macy died?
So, no, not technically. I mean, Jeanie posted that, but that talk started to come. The longer it took for that autopsy to come back, the more Jeanie talked about him and her getting married.
Oh, is that because of spousal privilege? So
I would suspect yes.
Interesting. Okay, so he dodged the bullet.
Zach, however, was no way, no how I'm not even divorced. Like, how can we get engaged and get married when I'm not even divorced?
So that's kind of how he got onto their radar. And then the charges were dropped against Zach regarding the supposed beating of Lisa because there were no injuries.
Nope, none.
And supposedly he beat her for 5 hours after she talked to police about Macy.
Yep. And the funny thing is that the police contacted Lisa Kiefer.
And they didn't contact Zach.
And didn't contact Zach. Or me.
Right. Something's backwards.
That's correct. One of our many problems.
Basically, the better investigation was really conducted by
Julia Hijazi. She was the second prosecutor who took it to trial. Well, while she's investigating it, she brought in her own team. They went through cell phone records and over 5,000 text messages and phone conversations between Jeanie and Zach. So they did their due diligence as far as conversations went to see, like, okay, so in the 3 months after, what kind of conversations did Mr. Kiefer have with Jeanie? Were there any conversations that would implicate Mr. Kiefer in any form of guilt? No. So either they are mentally sending each other messages and he's talking about it to her on a piece of paper and they never speak of it, or all those text messages and phone conversations between Jeanie and Zach where he's literally concerned for a grieving mother and his grieving girlfriend. Can't find nothing in text messages. Then they do GPS to the cell phones, the locations of all parties, traveling, etc. At 8:30 that morning, they know that Zach's leaving his house, which is 40-some minutes, 50 minutes between where he lives with his wife and where Jeanie's apartment was.
So cell phone towers can give general information.
Correct. He's at his house, and it shows him traveling. It shows him then pulling into the vicinity of the gym. Now, at the gym, you have to use a card. So while they know he was for sure at the gym, it shows her leaving to go to Bragg. It then shows her on Bragg for about 8 minutes.
Which is not long enough to be seen by a doctor.
And have a wellness exam. But she told Zach she had to go that morning because she had an appointment to get a body fat check. So it then shows her traveling home. It then shows Mr. Kiefer moving and stopping. And then they both are stopped at Jeannie's apartment.
They essentially met there.
Yes. And now Mr. Kiefer has said that from the very beginning, he did not get there until after Jeannie got there. And I said to Zach, because I knew that Jeannie had told me she had given Zach a key to her apartment. I asked him, I said, Zach, when you went to the apartment, did you use your key to unlock the door? He said, no. And then he said, I gave Jeannie the key back because I was trying to work things out with Lisa.
So he didn't even have it that morning.
He didn't even have it. And she said that he used the key to get into the apartment. Zach said, I have to be honest. I don't recall Jeannie using her key to get into the apartment either. So that tells me Jeannie left the door open. There would be a plan B. Remember I said that?
Yeah.
This would be why she was trying to get him to go there before she was home.
Right. She wanted him to be able to take the fall.
Correct.
Oh, that's terrifying. It's so calculated.
Like, haha, you want to go back together with your wife? Fine. Nobody's going to have you because you're going to jail for the rest of your life for killing my kid that I don't want in the first place.
Did she seem to want Macy at the beginning when she first got pregnant?
Yeah. I really thought, like, she's going to be a good mom. She's going to be like that mom. Like she used to say that she wanted a mom that would like meet her off the school bus and give her a hug and give her a kiss and be more emotionally affectionate.
Okay, yeah.
So in that sense, when I said about her breaking the cycle, that's where I meant it. But clearly I was wrong.
It probably got her a lot of attention to be pregnant.
Uh-huh.
And she's a fan of getting attention, it seems.
Oh, yeah. She sure does love it.
But then when the baby comes along, the attention for mom drops right off.
You're correct. Yep. And the more outgoing and fun and boisterous Macy became, and the more attention that people paid to Macy, I think looking back in hindsight, she hated every bit of it.
It seems that there was an element of jealousy, which is so strange to anyone who has a normal relationship with their children.
And honestly, this is what concerns me about the new baby.
Mm-hmm.
See, because there is no support here. No, I want to take that back. Because I am sure that Jeannie has found herself some very loyal friends.
That she told the story that she wanted them to hear.
Correct. And I am sure that they are good people to her. I am concerned for any person who feels some sort of loyalty to her or that truly believes she's whomever she's being that day, because I don't think people understand that she literally doesn't care about you. Like, she doesn't care about them. She doesn't care about them at all. If she cared about one person in this whole entire world, it was going to be me and the way I felt about her killing this baby. And there was no amount of emotional manipulation that I could use to even get her to shed a tear.
What aliases does she use? Do you think we can mention that?
Oh, yeah. So she uses Jenna. She likes that one. Sometimes she uses Jenny. Sometimes she uses Jarvis. And those are just the ones that I know currently.
And does she go by her maiden name?
No. All of her paperwork, it's her married name.
I kind of want to get the aliases out there just because someone could be listening. They should know who she is.
Oh, yes, I agree, because I truly, with the utmost, deepest part of my soul, am I truly worried for anyone who is around her in a personal, close relationship.
Yeah, it could be dangerous for them in many ways. Just ask Zach Kiefer.
That's right. And if she cannot physically overtake you, she thinks that she is mentally much smarter than the police, the prosecutor, the judge. And the further removed from this scenario she is, the more she feels she's gotten away with murder.
Oh, I'm sure she thinks she's the smartest person in any room she walks into.
Oh, yes, she does. Absolutely. And if you have a story, she has one that can do you better.
Always with the one up. I know people like that. all the signs are here, if only there was some kind of psychological evaluation before the trial.
The thing of the matter, but see, here's the thing. Jeanie re-enlisted in the Army. They had to do an eval. She passed. At no point did she even try to say she was postpartum, mental stress, nothing. No, she's perfectly fine.
Well, that's a good thing for the prosecution, too, because you can't use any type of defense involving mental illness.
Correct. The Army had required her to have so many hours of grief counseling after Macy. Now, I have these papers because they were in the papers with my name on it. And if Jeanie had 5 appointments a week, she went to 1 because she didn't have time for their bullshit.
Or for grieving her daughter, apparently.
Apparently.
It's such not maternal behavior.
And trust me, her instincts of maternity didn't get any better with the second one.
Which is so scary for that little girl.
The ability to tell a story has.
Oh, no doubt.
She went through this pregnancy until she was about 6-7 months pregnant, acting like it was her first baby.
Oh, God, that's so awful.
Calling people, asking them if what she was experiencing in her pregnancy was normal.
It just keeps getting worse. The more you tell me, it's just, my brain is swamped with all of the crazy things.
Yes, indeed.
Time for another quick sponsor break. I wanted to touch on one other thing that I had forgotten to mention earlier when we were talking about the trial. The texts that they read that Zach never got. So there were a number of text messages that Verizon proved he didn't receive. Okay.
When these text messages were played, they were played by the prosecution. Not a single person, me, Tina, no one, did we know this was coming out.
Did you know they existed?
I did not know they existed until trial.
So this must have been an awful punch in the gut.
Oh, now, see, I had always been very certain, because I know Jeanie the way that I do, that there would have been something. Jeanie likes to brag. I was correct in that because she had taken pictures, different pictures of Macy that I will never, ever show this world ever.
Oh, in the hospital?
She took of this baby even after they took her off life support.
She's snapping photos.
And she had them printed out.
She did what?
Yes. And those photos were hidden in the box that had my name on it. I knew she would have to have something. So knowing that I had those photos, the prosecution knew about the photos, we had discussed them. We had never discussed, not one time, that there were these text messages until trial. So when the jury heard these text messages, it was the first time any of us heard them. And Julia begins to read off the text messages, one after another, where she just is going on and on and on about beating this baby's ass.
Why would she tell him this?
Honestly, accessory after the fact. Why else?
So she was trying to set him up?
If she sent him these texts and something bad happened to Macy because he was an EMT, you see, you're bound by the law as an EMT.
Yeah, he would be a mandatory reporter.
Correct.
Wow, I'm glad for his sake that it was proven that...
Never got them.
I wonder why.
Well, okay, so he was on an ambulance 2 hours away, and his phone was turned off.
So they just didn't deliver.
They just didn't deliver. And Verizon backs up because Mr. Keeper says that his phone was off for shift. This day, a couple weeks even prior to this event, to show like he turned his phone off during shift and turned his phone off during this. There's nothing out of the ordinary. It's all his habits, his routine.
So it's just a straight up, believable, truthful alibi.
They couldn't have picked him up with a claw machine and dropped him there. Like, they cannot put him in that house. Can't do it.
No wonder the charges were dropped, and what a relief for him. But what happens now? He was incarcerated for what, 3 years?
44 months.
Almost 4 years. Does he get any kind of compensation for that?
They didn't even tell me they were sorry. All that they have tried to do since his release, we've had the trial. Ammons lets Jeanie out of jail on a signature bond for $25,000. They want to make Zach the dirty bird. We have a reconsideration hearing. They want to make Zach the dirty bird. Except no one has said, proven, shown, given a single stitch of evidence to make Mr. Kiefer be the guilty party here.
Other than his ex-wife, who was clearly bitter.
Bitter, a scorned woman, and has an agenda.
It's all so shady. The levels of corruption is like an onion.
When we had the reconsideration hearing, Judge Ammons wanted to throw me and Tina in jail.
Because you cried.
Cried and got up and walked out. We were told in the very beginning, if you feel like you are going to be emotional or anything like that, just get up and walk out. That's how he runs the courtroom. Okay, no problem. So as this is his ruling, he's giving his ruling, that's when he stated that the true victim here is Jeanie Ditty. And I was so overwhelmed that I sobbed out loud. And he said, I don't know what those people's problems are, but they have been a problem this whole entire time.
Because you're there to advocate for your niece.
I then stand up and just start to walk towards the door because I knew I had to get out. I had to get out. He's then yelling for the bailiffs to arrest us, to arrest me and Tina. Arrest them. I want them held for contempt.
I hope they didn't get away with that.
No, there wasn't a bailiff that they said, no way, we aren't touching this one.
That's just ridiculous.
So, funny thing, all of the lawyers that were there for Macy that day brought bail money. That's how sure we all were that the reconsideration hearing was going to go to shit.
And you were right, unfortunately.
Yep. He said he doesn't care what social media pages have to say, as they are not the judge and jury.
Is there any way to have him removed as the judge?
Well, so this is the first time he's been the judge on this case. This motion has been denied multiple times by other judges.
And he's the first one who fully bought into her story.
Well, see, that's because, again, this is where the recusal, all this fun stuff, they're all connected. Ammons, Condolin, Billy West, Lisa Black, all of them, they're all friends. And I don't mean like we're friends and we work together and can separate our lives because we have a job to do. I mean, they go to daddy-daughter dances together. They go to church together. They go to Sunday cookouts for fried chicken together.
Is Lisa Black the ex-wife?
No, she was the assistant defense attorney.
So they're all just a tight little clique.
Yes, they are. And the investigator for the original prosecutor, Desponzio, testified at the reconsideration hearing and said that he did not feel that Mr. Kiefer needed a lie detector test because he knew in his gut from doing this job for years that Mr. Kiefer was going to try and throw the lie detector test. That is the only time they literally took Zach Kiefer out of his cell to take a lie detector test. Desponzio said, I'm not doing this because he's going to lie. I know it. He's going to try to beat this lie detector test because he was a Green Beret. I can feel it. I've been doing this long enough to know he's lying.
It's not that simple to throw a lie detector, I would imagine.
It really is not, actually.
Right. I mean, if anyone could, I would think it would be someone like Jeanie.
Well, correct, because the more you believe your lie, the more likely you are to beat the lie detector test. Now, let me explain to you that Mr. Kiefer was so disheveled on the day of Macy's viewing that I actually don't know that I can ever say in my whole entire life that I had ever seen a grown man so distraught. You could tell that Mr. Kiefer was in his mind, I have a daughter that is literally a year older. And the more involved Jeanie and Zach became after this, the more I tried to tell him. I tried to tell him. If I were him, I wouldn't have believed me either.
Well, yeah, I mean, once you're in a relationship with a person like that, it's very easy for them to continue.
That's correct. And then she started playing the game with people. Oh, that wasn't me. That was Zach. Where she would say Zach was on her phone texting people when My niece never left her phone. I'm going to tell you that's just no. She probably had a better chance of convincing me that Macy fell off the balcony of this apartment than convincing me that Mr. Kiefer had her phone. She tried to take her phone with her to jail. Okay? So there's zero chance that she gave Mr. Kiefer her phone to text anybody anything. I didn't believe it then, and I definitely don't believe it now.
And it's just a matter of making a jury see the truth and believing the stories that aren't absolutely made up and haven't shifted over the years.
And I can honestly tell you, like, even now, all of the bad things that happened to Jeanie are because of me.
Oh, okay.
I make people do this. So one of the men who she tried to convince was the dad of this child. She actually picked an argument with him, sent him a text message and said, Michelle made you get me pregnant on purpose, didn't she?
Oh, I didn't know you had control over her reproductive habits. That's great.
Apparently I do. I even have a screenshot. But yes, apparently I made somebody get her pregnant. But the man that she tried to say was this baby's father, mathematically can't be. She actually had this man go to an ultrasound and everything.
But he had only been with her
5 weeks. That's right. And ultrasound tech said, oh, honey, have you been feeling sick? Because you are quite far. No, I had my period last month. And the ultrasound tech said, I don't think so. You're 7.9 weeks pregnant.
Yeah, she has a way of trying to make everything suit her, keeping people around who are useful to her and telling stories that make her look good.
Somebody who actually believes that she is their friend. They have told her their deepest, darkest secret. And that is what she will use to manipulate that friendship to her benefit until it no longer benefits her.
Well, hopefully, if they happen to hear this episode and realize this is who they're dealing with, maybe they'll understand that all of this evidence stacked up is not so many people coming together to collude and to make a case against Jeanie unjustly. It's just the evidence. It's just what happened, allegedly.
Right. And make no mistake, I was so close to Jeanie that if there was going to be anybody in this world that was going to want to blame somebody else, it was me. Because no way, no how did I ever want to believe that she had that inside of her.
She was like a daughter to you for years.
How could someone I love do something so horrible?
It can be so close to home and you don't want to see it, but I'm so glad that you love Macy enough to take one look at her and understand that something is not right.
This isn't right, and there have been so many other babies and children and toddlers since Macy that have suffered some horrible things, and I know that Macy has a lot of friends. And I know that Macy will do the best that she can to make sure that her sister doesn't suffer. Whatever that may be, I know that she will not allow her sister to suffer.
We should talk about Macy before we end this because that's so important to me, hearing your memories of her and your favorite things that she used to do or say and that sort of thing. What was your nickname for her?
So we had two, Mixie Trixie, my fairy pixie, or Crazy Macy. Crazy Macy actually wasn't quite as much as Mixie Trixie, but she did have those big curls. And sometimes she'd wake up and when she'd sit up, all the curls would fan out over her head like a peacock.
I can picture it.
And then everybody would be like, Crazy Macy, Crazy Macy. And she would giggle. And she'd know and she'd shake her head because she knew that it was her hair.
Oh.
And the Mixie Trixie, that was always it, from the very first time I held her, because she had those curls. And as her hair started to grow in, she had the little Gerber baby curl right in the middle of her forehead. And I just thought every time she was sleeping, she just looked like a little fairy baby. And, as she grew, she loved everything. It was like she was taking it all in, is the best way to put it, because if she saw a flower, we had to stop and smell it. She'd say, no, 1 minute, me smell it. If she saw a butterfly, she loved the butterflies. Oh, it's gonna get me! It get me! It get me! And with Tina, she would always. Tina is a very big Alabama fan, and Macy knew that. Macy knew, like, when it was football time, her and Nana had to watch football, and Macy used to say, "Go Nana team! Go Nana team!"
That's so cute.
So I don't know how to describe it any other way than to say that she was literally always happy.
Time for one last sponsor break.
And I'm going to be honest, Macy loved her mother. Macy loved her mother. And there are so many things for a long time that I wish I could have changed for that baby. Still do. But I have had some of the deepest, hardest laughs of my whole life because of that baby.
I have no doubt.
She, don't mess with me. Don't mess with me. Don't do it, because she's going to tell you, you leave me alone.
Oh.
If we would have her, and Bobby her and I'd be sitting on the couch. Well, then he'd sit down next to us and she'd look at him and she'd be like, why? And he said, I'm going to sit next to you. So she called me Aunt Shellery, like celery, but with the Shellery part.
Oh, that's so cute.
Actually, the last couple months, she had it down pretty close to being right, but there was still that little in there a little bit. So it was fine. She could have called me that for the rest of her life. And she would be like, why? And he'd be like, I want to sit next to you and Aunt Shelley. And then she would just start going on and on and on and on. And she'd point her finger, and then he'd go, but I love you. And she'd go, oh, okay, you sit.
Oh, that's so cute.
If she cried, it was literally because there was something wrong. Like, I had her, she was probably about 8 months old. She was with me probably for about 12 days. And she was teething bad. And it was literally the first time I'd really seen her be miserable. And I said, Aunt Shelley's going to fix this for you, my girl. I said, come on, Mix, let's go. So I pick her up and up the steps we go. So I froze a wash rag. And then once the wash rag was frozen, I gave her the wash rag to chew on. That was it. That's all it took. She was happy as could be. She just kept wanting it. I had to keep one in the freezer at all times because she wanted it constantly. But she absolutely positively was pacified and calm and cool and collected. And I don't know, she just took everything in. She was just like a little sponge. The flowers, the birds, the bees, the dogs, people, everything. And like a hug and a kiss. And she would say, I love you. I love you. And she would say it over and over and over again because she would think, it was a game. She would say, I love you. And you just give her like a funny face. And then she'd give you a funny face. And then she'd go, I love you. And then, of course, it's time to say, I love you. And then she giggles. You know what I mean? Like, it was just, everything was fun. She enjoyed every little bit of her little life. Every bit of it. She may not have always enjoyed it when she was at home with her mother, because God knows the torture that child went through and for how long, considering the autopsy. But that child did know joy, and that child absolutely knew love. Even if it came from the world around her, she knew it.
That's amazing. Does she leave you signs?
All the time.
Yeah.
So Macy was born, her month is December. Her death is also December. There will always be 12 cents. Always a dime and 2 pennies.
So you find them everywhere, just that configuration.
12 cents, that's it. And Macy's favorite movie was Frozen. So if I'm feeling down, that movie comes on at the most random times. And it's usually when she is very heavy on my heart. Do I always get signs from that little baby? Always.
That's amazing. And you had FaceTimes with her a lot, right?
Oh yes, we FaceTimed. So actually, from the time that Jeanie found out she was pregnant, that's really when the FaceTimes started, because Jeanie wanted me to be there every morning with her. And then once Macy was born, I'd get a phone call every morning, every night before Macy went to bed. Just calling to tell you good night, Aunt Shelley, so that you can say good night to Macy.
Oh, wow. Well, you had a special bond. That's amazing.
I mean, I'd even send I'd make videos like when I was at work, and I would be talking to her, and I'd send the video to Jeanie in a text message, and Jeanie would then show it to Macy, and Macy would run around looking for me because she could hear me and see me on the phone. So she's wondering, why am I not right there?
Right. Well, it's so special to have that relationship with her. I'm glad you have that, and you'll never not have that.
I will always have that baby's memories, always.
Exactly.
I'll never know who she will be or who she would have been, but I will always know who she was.
That hit me hard. Yeah, you're right. I am so sorry that this happened and that it's still ongoing 8-9 years later. But I really hope, for your entire family's sake, and Kevin's, and Zach's, that this gets resolved, that she's not allowed to take this nothing plea deal, that she has to face accountability because it's time.
She's definitely been able to hide behind her lies far too long.
Yes. And Macy deserves better than that, and so do all of you.
She does. And that's why I always encourage people to say Macy's name. Say that baby's name and give that baby her power back so she can fight for herself.
Exactly. And that's why we're doing this today. And
that's right.
We're saying the name Macy Grace Ditty. She mattered. Everything about her mattered, and she still matters.
Absolutely.
And we'll never let her be forgotten, and you're doing an amazing job with that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Macy's Aunt Shelley for helping me put these episodes together. It's my honor to help her family tell their sweet girl's story. Macy's story really hit a nerve with me, and I hope with all my heart that she and her family see justice very soon. That's it for this episode. Join me next time for another child's story. If you like the show, please follow or subscribe to Suffer the Little Children on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast listening app. And please leave me a 5-star rating and a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. Visit the website at sufferthelittlechildrenpod.com. You can support the show by visiting patreon.com/stlcpod, where you can become a patron for rewards ranging from a shout-out by name on the show to bonus content and exclusive gifts. You can also support the show at ko-fi.com/stlcpod. Follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Suffer the Little Children Pod and on TikTok at STLCpod. View photos related to today's episode on Facebook. This podcast is researched, written, hosted, edited, and produced by Laine. Intro theme music is by Dream Note Music, and all music for the show is licensed from audiojungle.net. For more information about preventing or reporting child abuse, visit childhelp.org or call your area's child abuse hotline. And remember, if you see something, say something.